woke up today and chose violence. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. Okay, I wanted to say a big thank you for 400 subscribers. I didn't get to say like a formal thank you because, you know, I couldn't film, but thank you so much. That is just an unbelievable number. Thanks. But anyways, as promised, I will be giving you guys a character analysis of the show, A Teacher. Before I get into this, I wanted to say a huge trigger warning. This show is about an inappropriate relationship between a 30-year-old English teacher and her high school student. So, like, massive trigger warning for, like, grooming and abuse, because that's all this is, basically. So if that's something that you do not want to watch right now, you can't handle, please click away from the video. You know, keep yourself safe. I don't want to, like, trigger you or anything. So Hulu's A Teacher is about a 30-year-old woman named Claire Wilson who teaches high school English. One of her high school students, Eric Walker, needs to get a higher score on the SATs in order to get a scholarship for college. He lives with his two brothers and a single mom, and they just can't afford college without it. I mean, no one can really afford college in America. Like, come on, who can afford that? But he needs help with it, so he asks her to tutor him, and they end up actually getting into a very inappropriate relationship. And this is what their story is about. My initial reaction to the show was, I didn't like the way they made this show. I think it got better towards the end. Like, towards the end, they were both, like, Eric was grown up. He was like 27 or 28, I think, at the end of the show. And he kind of realized that what happened to him was wrong and what she did to him was wrong. You know, he realized that he had been groomed and that he had been abused. I think they both kind of realized that that was wrong. And so I think there was a little bit of character growth at the end, but I think they really just romanticized it way too much at the entire season. None of it made sense. It went very fast-paced, and I feel like the way that they portrayed this relationship, it wasn't like they were trying to expose grooming, expose what can happen, like the dangers of grooming and everything like that. It felt like they were trying to fulfill some like middle-aged man's teacher-student fantasy. That was my reaction to it. Like, I felt like they were trying to make it, like, sexy. And it wasn't, so let me be clear, it was not. But yeah, that was my initial thoughts on it, so I'm gonna give you a breakdown of the characters and what I thought about each of them. So first off, Claire Wilson. So much to say about good old Claire Wilson. Claire is the new 30-year-old English teacher at the local high school. She used to work as a middle school English teacher, and I'm glad she doesn't anymore. That would have been way worse. My initial reaction to Claire was that she was very strange. Like, not just the fact that she, you know, found a 17-year-old high school boy attractive as a 30-year-old woman, but also the decisions that she makes in the relationship, how immature she is. I just realized these things about her as I, like, you know, watched the show. And I think that all the characters are kind of immature, but her especially. The first thing I noticed about her, in the first episode, in the beginning, when she goes to a market, and she sees a color of lipstick that she likes. And instead of, like, you know, just picking it up and paying for it like a normal human being, she steals it. Like, she just slips into her purse and just goes off with it. And then she, like, applies it into the car and you kind of see her, like, smiling. Like, she was like, ooh, look what I just did. I'm so bad. And then she went home to her husband, Matt, and she was, like, bragging to him about it. She was like, oh, I guess what I did today? I stole lipstick. I just took it. And that kind of showed me that she's very immature, and she wants to feel young and wild again. She wants to feel spontaneous again. I think that she kind of resents her age, and she's not even old. She's like 30. She's not by no means is she old. But I think she really just resents the fact that she's growing up. And I think this kind of had to do with, like, her father, how growing up she had, her mom was dead and her father was an alcoholic, and she was constantly worrying about him, so she never really got a chance to be a child. She was never taken care of. She had to take care of others. And I think that because she got her youth stolen from her, she really started to crave it as she got older. She wanted it back, and she wanted to do something wild. That's not an excuse for what she did, obviously, but I think it's kind of where it comes from. And if you notice on the first day of school, she reads her students the poem, "Do not go gentle into that good night." I think that also kind of foreshadowed what would happen, because it just shows that she doesn't like the fact that she's growing up. She doesn't like the concept of it. And I mean, I'm 16 and I growing up terrifies me. And I think she kind of used Eric. She used this, like, vulnerable high school boy as a way of making herself feel that way again. I think she definitely used him for her own, like, selfish purposes. Another thing I noticed about her was that she seemed to be interested in him, in Eric, from the very beginning. Like, there was no, like, progression into this. Like, I think she had her intentions straight from the very beginning. And I say this because they meet at a diner, like, well, they don't meet up. Eric is with his buddies at the diner that he works at, and they happen to see Claire sitting by herself in the bar. And his buddies are like, oh, there's a hot new teacher. Let's go approach her, because they think that she's attractive for some reason. She's not, but you know. And so they go up to her, and then eventually, after some chatting, his buddies leave, and Eric is left alone with Claire, and he confides in her that he really needs a scholarship to go to college, because he wants to be like a doctor or something, and that's like expensive, a lot of debt there, so he needs to get a scholarship to college. But he needs to get a higher score on his SATs in order to do that. And we find out that she actually went to the same college that he wants to go to, and she seems to know a lot about the SATs. She tells him, like, oh, the SATs, it's like a skill that you can actually learn how to pass it, and she seems to know a lot about it. So, of course, he's like, hey, you know, would you mind helping me? Which is a perfectly reasonable request because, like, she's his teacher. But the way she acted when he asked that just threw me off guard. She acted as though he asked her on a date. Like, she was like, oh, well, I'll have to see if that's okay first. She was very flustered. She acted like he was flirting with her, and he wasn't. He wasn't flirting with her at first. He was literally just asking her for help because she's his teacher, and that's kind of like her job. I was like, yes, you're allowed to tutor your student, like, duh. I thought that was weird. And because she went home that night after giving him a ride home, she went home, and we actually saw her pleasuring herself in her bed while imagining him, like him doing things to her. So we know that she was attracted to him, and she had sick intentions from the very beginning. The relationship is never really normal throughout this show, especially her. The thing she does, it's weird because when he first kisses her, she acts very shocked about it, and she's like, you can't do that. And I'm glad that she denied him at first, that she refused his advances, as she should, but you're not completely, like, in the clear here. You kind of led him on. She would give him rides home. She once, like, you know, saved him from getting arrested. He wouldn't respond to her texts once, and so she came to his house unannounced and just, like, hung out there. Like, who does that? So they would chat all the time. She took him on a college tour once, which wasn't, like, that weird, but they actually ended up going to, like, a frat party together. Like, their relationship wasn't appropriate from the beginning. And then he kind of, like, he was like, oh, he thought that she liked him. I mean, she did. And he goes in for a kiss, and she's like, you could ruin my life. You know how much trouble I could get in? Like, get out. Then he's like, no, like, I promise I won't do it again, but, like, please continue tutoring me. Like, I'm sorry that I did that. Please just continue helping me. So 5 seconds later, she's like, all right, just don't kiss me again. Well, I was like, Miss Girl, that's not gonna last. I already know that. And it didn't last very long. Because when prom rolls around, and he takes a girl his age, as he should, Allison, she gets jealous. She's one of the chaperones for the prom, so they're in the gym decorating for the prom. Like, the students are helping out, and she's helping some teachers out. And the whole time she's talking to Allison, she's just, like, staring them down, you know, like, quite obviously jealous. And then when the prom strolls around, she confronts him because he, like, stood her up on one of their teaching sessions, because he kind of realized that he just couldn't be around her. And he told her, like, oh, I'm sorry that I stood you up, that I didn't go to our tutoring session, but the thing is, I just cannot be around you. I'm so deeply attracted to you that I just can't trust myself around you. Like, this is gonna go too far. Which I feel like was the mature, like, step for him to do. Like, that was mature. That was a mature decision for him to make. It was like, I'm gonna put a stop to this. But of course, they didn't. She ends up walking out to her car, and he follows her, and she knows that he's following her because he's, like, 3 feet behind her the entire time. And I was like, are you not gonna, like, tell him to leave? But no, after the end of prom night, they literally end up doing it in her car.
Hey.
Whoa. Hey.
Where were you? I waited in the diner for you for like 45 minutes.
Oh, shit. I'm sorry, I totally forgot.
Don't lie to me. You basically begged me to continue tutoring you, and then you pull this crap?
What do you want me to say? I can't stop thinking about you. I mean, I have fucking dreams about you. I wanted to keep tutoring, but I'm too attracted to you. And, I don't want to get you in trouble. But I feel like I can't control myself around you. I'm sorry. I should have told you.
You should go back inside.
12 seconds later.
After she told him, you can't kiss me. What are you doing? After she literally said that, she just decides to do this. It's sealed now. What's done is done. You can't go back from that now. And it wasn't an impulsive decision either. They had a long walk to go. They both got in the car, they drove off to a parking lot, they thought about this, and then she told him, do you want to do this? And he was like, yeah. And she was like, all right, get in the back seat. This wasn't just an impulsive decision. Not saying that, screwing your high school student is ever an impulsive decision, but, it wasn't impulsive. This was something that she wanted to do. And when she gets home after just sleeping with the high school student in her backseat, she kind of just sits there in her car and smiles, all creepily. Yeah, no regrets, I guess. I know I'm just rambling on. I usually have a script of my videos, but I just have a general outline today. I know I'm rambling, but I also want to talk about how weird of a character she is. And what I mean by this is in the rules that she makes so many weird rules and exceptions in their relationship. She's such a strange character. I never understand why she does what she does. One thing I didn't understand was that he couldn't like her Instagram photos. And him following her on Instagram was supposed to be a symbolic thing, because it was she got in a fight with her husband Matt, and then after she got in a fight with him, she finally accepted his follow request. After a few days, she finally accepted Eric's follow request on Instagram. And I get that it was supposed to be a symbolic gesture of she's moving away from her husband and she's becoming closer to him. But I didn't really understand that, because following your teacher on Instagram isn't a weird thing to do, really. Kids do it all the time. I don't know if it's different at different schools, but I'm in high school and kids follow their teachers on Instagram all the time and even comment on their posts. It's not a big deal. No one cares. As long as you're not sliding into their DMs or anything, no one really cares. And since he follows her on Instagram, she posted a photo of her in the morning. It was I love mornings, and her holding a mug or something, kind of cringy. But she posted that, and he liked it because he follows her. And then she saw that he liked it, and she was like, hey, you can't do this. I didn't understand that, because I was like, girl, you literally came to his house unannounced once, took him to a college frat party, you literally slept with him in the back of your car, but this is clear you crossed the line. This is not the most dramatic thing that you've done. Trust me. Especially when she went to a bar with her friend, and she was in the bathroom, because she had a hickey on her neck, and her friend noticed it, and her friend was like, ooh, is that a hickey? So she was like, oh my gosh, I gotta go to the bathroom and cover it up. And of course the friend thought that it was her husband's, and so she went to the bathroom and she tried to cover it up, but then she decided to just spontaneously take a picture of her boobs, in front of the mirror or something, and send it to Eric through Snapchat. And I was like, okay, so you can send him a nude photo of you and Snapchat him, but he can't like your Instagram photo. What? And then he saw the photo and he was like, oh, cool. And she was like, I want to see you now. She wanted him to send her a photo, and he was like, sorry, I'm babysitting right now. And she acted kind of mad about that at first. She was like, oh, you can't send me a nude photo of yourself because you're babysitting? Because there's children nearby? I was like, honey, he literally just saved you from a possible CP charge, so I feel you should be grateful right now. And of course, there was the little cabin trip, where she somehow managed to sneak him off to a cabin in Texas, was it? For his birthday weekend, for the whole weekend, for his 18th birthday. And I was like, okay, again, you can do that, but he can't like your Instagram photo. That's too risky. What? But whatever, we'll let it slide. They have this cabin trip, and it's really cringy and awful, especially because her husband calls her in the morning after she slept with Eric, which I guess he's 18 now, finally legal. But after she slept with him, her husband like called her the next morning because he thinks that she's like at a conference or something. And so she's talking to him, and Eric sees her calling him, and he gets kind of jealous because the woman he's sleeping with like has a husband still. And so when she comes back inside, he's acting kind of mad about it, and then he turns that anger into like lust, and he just like, take your underwear off, like demands it. I think they tried to do like a sexy sub/dom like scene there, and it was anything but. It was just the worst thing I've ever seen. And the final thing I want to talk about with this awful woman is her lack of accountability. The first time we see this is when she's talking to Catherine outside the bar, and that, like, you know, the scene that wrecks it all. It made no sense because she established all these rules, and she was like, you can't like my Instagram photos, you can't do this, you can't do this. And she finds a way to, like, make an exception to all the rules for herself, right? And after making all these rules and putting in all these, like, efforts to keep the relationship a secret, she, like, after a couple sips of, like, tequila or whatever, she just confesses everything to Catherine, her coworker. She's like, because Catherine's like, oh, like, you're glowing, like, what's going on? You must be having an affair. Because I guess being happy means you're having an affair. I don't know, straight people, I don't know. But she's at first she denies it. She's like, no, I was at a conference. But he's a terrible liar, so her friend is like, no, bullcrap, like, where were you? So Catherine is like, oh, tell me about him, like, is he older? Claire is like, no, he's younger. And when she says younger, Catherine probably means, like, mid-20s or something, you know, early to mid-20s. Legal, and not her student. And then after, like, Catherine begs to know who it is, Claire finally says, it's Eric. And Catherine's like, Eric who? And she goes, Eric Walker. Then Catherine's like, you're kidding. Like, you're not being serious right now. And Claire seems shocked when, like, Catherine says, I'm gonna report you, which I don't get. I'm like, do you not realize this is, like, a serious crime? Do you not realize that, like, sleeping with your high school student is, like, a bit of an abuse of power? Like, do you not understand that's not socially acceptable? Because when Catherine said she's gonna report her, Claire was like, what? Catherine, like, what? He's 18.
Claire, he's your student.
I know, but he's 18, and we're in love with each other.
He's your student.
Well, wait, Catherine, listen, let me explain, okay?
That's like a monumental abuse of power.
No, you don't understand. Okay, talk to me about this. Please, he's an adult, okay? He's 18. This is not abuse. We're in, like, a real relationship. We love each other.
God, stop. I don't want to hear
He's
that.
over the age of consent.
He's a kid.
So Claire's all like, oh no, I'm gonna go to jail, duh. And she confesses to her husband that she's been having an affair, and she does a lot of crap. I'm not gonna talk about everything. She, like, runs away with Eric for, like, a day because, you know, that's her plan, I guess. They had, like, no money and they were sleeping in a hotel for, like, a night, and she thought that would work. I don't know what her idea, I don't know what her plan was there. But they ran away for, like, a day until Eric was like, I need to go home. Like, I have a family, I can't do this. And so he left in the morning. And then we kind of think that Claire was taking accountability at first when she eventually does go back home and she turns herself into the police because, like, there's no other option. But we later see that she doesn't take accountability still because she goes to live with her brother. And, you know, the wife of her brother's a police officer, he kind of helped her get through the process, and then he's like, you know what, she won't have a home, her husband divorced her, she needs somewhere to stay. And so he's like, you know what, you can stay with us, you have to get a job, but you can stay with us until you can get back on your feet. And her brother, his name is, we're just gonna call him Wilson because I forget what his name is, we're just gonna call him Wilson. Wilson's wife is kind of mad about that. She's like, oh, we have, like, a sex offender in our house. Great. So she's kind of upset about that, and, like, Claire goes off on her at dinner because Claire went job hunting one day and someone was like, hey, don't hire that woman, she screwed her high school student. And I mean, duh, that's gonna happen. People don't take too kindly to that. And so Claire goes home and her brother is like, oh, how was job hunting? And she's like, oh, it didn't go well, somebody called me a sexual predator, and so I, like, left. And Wilson's wife was like, are you surprised? Like, look what you've done. And Claire like yells at her and kind of just like, she's just being really mean. And then she's talking to Wilson about it, and she's like, well, you guys understand that like he's an adult. She's like, you understand that like, you know, we were in love or whatever. And her like brother is like, Claire, you did something wrong. Like, he was in high school, like he was your student. Like, you need to accept that what you did was bad. Like, you weren't just misunderstood. You abused your power. And you can see that she still doesn't accept that. She, in her mind, she thinks that she fell in love and the world just doesn't understand. She thinks that she did no wrong, which kind of just goes back to how immature she is. She doesn't accept responsibility for her own actions. And when she tries to like take Eric out for lunch, like 10 years later, and talk to him to get the guilt off of her chest, I was like, just leave him alone. Like, he has grown up and he's realized that what happened to him was wrong, that what you did to him was wrong, and he's like, he had to deal with that. He has to deal with that trauma that you put on him. Like, he has to deal with that now. He doesn't want to see you. He doesn't need to see you. He doesn't want to hear your pity story about how you can't find a job and everyone hates you. Like, you made that choice. I just really hated her character. I hated how immature she was, how she never took responsibility for her actions, and how the show kind of romanticized their relationship right up until like the very end. So the next character and the last character that we're going to be talking about, because he's the other like main character and I don't want to go too far into depth about the smaller characters, is Eric Walker, of course. Eric Walker didn't strike me as like too complex of a character. I didn't expect him to be. He's like an 18-year-old high school boy. You know, he just kind of vibing, just living his life. He has struggles. You know, he needed to get a better score on his SATs, and I felt bad for him because he had the situation where he didn't come from a very privileged background. He had a single mom and 2 brothers that he was always caring for. I felt like he was mature for his age in some ways, but in other ways not so much, which I didn't expect him to be like a very, very mature person because, again, he's a high school student. But I did feel for him because I felt like he was very taken advantage of by Claire Wilson. Like, I know that he felt like he was in love with her genuinely, but throughout the show you see how badly messed up he is because of this. Like, he went to her for help because she was his teacher and he had like, you know, the weight of the world on his shoulders. He was taking care of his juggling school, sports, and taking care of his brothers on top of his job, and he needed to get into college because his family couldn't afford it. He had a lot of weight on his shoulders. He was forced to become an adult earlier than most kids his age. So I felt for him in that way, and I felt like she really took advantage of that. You know, she got close to him, he confided in her, he told her about his struggles, I even bonded over their like daddy issues for a little while, and I feel like she really just took advantage of him in that way. Because he even told her, like, when she saved him from getting arrested at that party, like, he told her, he was like, I'm sorry that I called you, but I just feel like I can trust you. And that just kind of broke my heart because I was like, he trusted you, he looked up to you, you were an adult that he really admired. And you could have gone a better way with this. You could have like helped him with his SATs. You could have been a mentor to him. You could have made a good impact on his life. But instead you chose to just abuse him and groom him simply because you wanted to be like young and wild again or whatever. And we see that towards the end when he goes to college and people, I like how they did kind of show how male victims of, you know, like sexual abuse aren't taken as seriously. Like, when he went to college, they were all like, oh my gosh, you're a legend, like you screwed your teacher, oh my gosh. But you saw in the way, like in like the look in his eyes when they talked about this, that he genuinely was attached to her. Like, this wasn't like someone that it wasn't like, oh, my hot teacher or whatever. This wasn't some kind of fantasy for him. He genuinely felt like he loved her and he trusted her and he had an attachment to her. And after what she did to him, it was only afterwards that he realize that she traumatized him. And he's gonna have to live with that for the rest of his life, what happened to him. And it really irritated me because, like, you know, people didn't take him seriously. They were all just like, oh, like, I heard that you got with your teacher, man. That's awesome. Wow, like, good job. Nobody took his pain seriously. Or even, like, offered to help him for it, besides his mom. Nobody was there to tell him this wasn't your fault. And it seemed like he felt like he couldn't really talk about it. He couldn't talk about what happened because people would be like, oh, you're lucky. Like, why would you be upset about that? Because that's how people view a lot of male victims. Especially a lot of other men. Like, a lot of men treat men like they can't be victims. They're like, oh, well, you should have enjoyed it. And I really felt for him in that way because it's like he didn't have somebody else to turn to. His pain wasn't validated. And we also see this, how like it kind of traumatized him. He was kind of triggered when they went to the frat boy like initiation or whatever, and they had a stripper there. And can we just say that the woman who was hired to be a stripper for them was awful. I hated her. Because even though like it was clear like that he didn't want her to do anything to him, she still proceeded. Like she told him to get up, and she like was like, you know, doing her thing on him, and he literally told her multiple times, he was like, stop, I don't want this, stop. And she just wouldn't. She just kept going, and she started saying things, started like, you know, kind of like saying things that revolved around like teachers and students, and like, you know, trying and kind of hitting home to his situation, and kind of triggered him. And so he got up and left the room, and then that kind of shows like how he's still deeply traumatized by what happened. So screw that stripper. I hate her. You suck. And I hate that all of his friends just sat down and watched her do that to him. Like even when he was saying please stop, and he was obviously uncomfortable with what she was doing, all of his friends were just cheering, and they didn't see that he was in pain. They didn't care. That scene also kind of just shows that what happened between him and Claire is something that's going to affect him for the rest of his life. It's going to affect all of his future relationships. We kind of see that there too, which I appreciated that they showed that. They showed that this isn't something that's just going to go away. This is something that's going to stay with him for the rest of his life. And he tells Claire that when she like meets up with him at lunch, and he kind of just lays it all out, and he's like, and kind of just like gives it to her. He tells her that he's going to have to deal with that for the rest of his life. But we also see that even though she traumatized him, he still misses her a lot. Like I remember like he when he was laying down on the grass with that one boy in college, and it was like at night, and they had like just done shrooms or whatever, I think, and he was just looking, he was like, I miss Claire so much, like I miss her so much. Like she abused him, but he was still so attached to her. So I like that towards the end they kind of showed the impact that she had on him, the negative impact that she had on him. I also liked how at the end when they met up, like when he first started at the grocery store, he was like very flustered, and he kind of quickly like got out and was just you know, very on edge because of the experience, which is understandable. If you saw your like abuser, the grown woman that groomed and abused you while you were in high school, that's how you would feel. And again, the fact that she invited him to lunch, that she like you know, found his old number and invited him to lunch to talk to her, I was like, girl, leave him alone. Like you've done enough, leave that boy alone. And I liked that they didn't romanticize it anymore when he did go to lunch with her, when he was like, he told her that like his brother, one of his brothers was now 17, and he's like, oh, my brother's 17 and he looks so young. So he was like, you looked at me when I was 17, when you were 30, and you were interested in me. Like that's disgusting. So I like that he finally admitted to himself that like what happened wasn't his fault, and that he was the victim in the situation, and that like she was the bad guy. I like that he finally came to that conclusion, you know, after like 10 years. He was like, what she did to me was wrong, and it's not my fault. So that was my impression of the show A Teacher. If you haven't watched it, don't. I'm assuming you've all watched it, because if not, then you just went to this video and you have no idea what I'm talking about. But if you haven't watched it, you can. I just don't recommend it. It's not that great, really. It's fast-paced, it's weird, nothing makes sense, and they kind of romanticize abuse a little bit. But if you hate yourself like me, then I guess you can go watch it. But anyways, thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Stay safe, y'all.